So that's what we're going to talk about next is financial eligibility resource. And it says allowance resource standards. What it means is what can you keep for resources and qualify for Medicaid? And what we're talking about right now is what is countable, because not all resources are countable. So with Medicaid qualification, what we want to know is what resources do you have and what counts. The Medicaid beneficiary, the person who needs the care, countable resources, all they can have is $2,000. And that's why it is believed that a Medicaid beneficiary must be without assets. Bankrupt is the term that Washington CARES Act used. I would say that they have very low resources if they are the Medicaid beneficiary in countable resources. One of the things that I'm sure you're going to find confusing, and Medicaid can be one of the most confusing areas of legal practice because the rules are so non-commonsensical in ways. So interestingly, for some people, and if they need a nursing home care and they have not been on Medicare, they're under 65, there's no resource limit. So yeah, you heard me right. And that makes no sense for a lot of reasons, but it's just how the Affordable Care Act and the MAGI program is set up. But that's an exception. Keep in mind, the rule that I want you to understand is that a Medicaid beneficiary can only have $2,000 in countable resources. We'll talk about what else they can have that doesn't count in a moment. But if you are a couple, part of a couple, and your spouse needs long-term care, you are in a far different situation than if you are a single person who could only have $2,000, because Washington and the Medicaid program has a policy against impoverishing the community spouse, the well spouse. What that means is there is what's called a resource allowance for the community spouse, for the spouse who doesn't need care. The minimum resource allowance in Washington state is $68,301. So the community spouse can have $68,000 in the bank, for example. Not a ton of money, but way better than $2,000. And if the Medicaid spouse beneficiary is in the nursing home, the community spouse, the one at home who doesn't need care, can keep up to $148,620. So there's different standards. Remember when I was talking earlier about skilled nursing versus COPS care, COPS being not skilled nursing, there's different rules with regard to resources that apply to these different programs. So the COPS program is a program for non-nursing home care for assisted living, adult family home, and at-home care. The COPS standards for what the community spouse, the well spouse, can keep is $68,301. If the ill spouse is in the nursing home, the well spouse can keep up to $148,620. How does that work? In our state, Washington says you can keep up to that amount, but only if when the ill spouse started receiving care at the hospital or at the skilled nursing facility or wherever they entered the care system, that the resources of the couple that are countable exceeded double of the 148. I don't make up these rules. These are just the rules. In other words, let's say that at the time the ill spouse went into care, the couple had $400,000 in bank accounts and retirement accounts, etc. Okay, because that all counts. If they had $400,000, that's more than double of 148. Therefore, the couple, the well spouse, can keep $148,000. But in order to get on Medicaid, the excess resource between 148 and 400 has to be spent down or converted to non-countable. We'll talk about how. Let's say it wasn't $400,000 that the couple had. it was 200. How much does the community spouse get to keep as their community spousal resource allowance? Half of 200 or 100,000. Let's say they only had 100,000. How much did they get to keep? They get to keep the 68,000. So confusing rules. I'm sharing it with you to hope that you get a sense that the community spouse does get to keep some money, but it is dependent on how much money they had when the ill spouse went into skilled nursing, if that's where they go. One of the things also that people don't understand is that once the community spouse gets their community spousal resource allowance, let's say it's $148,000, and their spouse is on Medicaid in the skilled nursing facility, thereafter, the community spouse, what they have in their name can increase. It can go to 200,000 or beyond. It doesn't matter what the community spouse's amount of resources is once their spouse has qualified for Medicaid. So let's say they play the lotto and they get $100,000 winnings. Great, they can keep it. Does not in any way interfere with their spouse's care benefits. Also, what's important to understand, and it's not on the slide, so I'm going to stop sharing, is that the community spouse, I say community spouse, well spouse, I say them interchangeably, they mean the same thing. Their income, whatever their income is, in Washington state does not have to contribute to their spouse's care costs. So it's their income, community spouse, it's their income. It doesn't go to pay for their spouse's care. The only income that pays for the spouse's care is the sick spouse's income. And what their income doesn't cover for their care, Medicaid covers the rest. So those are important rules to understand, that it's really important because that protects the community spouse from becoming impoverished.